Welcome to Safe and Sound, a monthly podcast on cybersecurity, presented by GrandPad and the Leighton Podcast Network. It's the inaugural episode of Safe and Sound as we talk about cybersecurity for seniors here on the Leighton Media Podcast Network. And we are so happy to be partnering with the folks from GrandPad, and their CEO, Scott Lien, is going to be helping us as we go along and keeping seniors safe. And Scott, I think this all started, at least for me, when we had someone here in Winona, and KWNO, one of our news talk stations here, talked about someone who had been scammed out of $5,000. It was kind of that typical scam of your computer's infected and we're going to report you and we need cryptocurrency, and she did it and wiped her out. And it just, having an elderly mom at the time, it just devastated me. And we were just in the beginning stages of working with you folks, and I thought, we got to do something about this. We can't just let this continue to go on. I knew a little bit about GrandPad, but give us the background, and we're so excited to have you as our expert to talk about this and to try and prevent this from happening to other people.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Brian. Scams against people of all ages is a big problem, but it's a catastrophic problem with this awesome group of people we call super seniors, those over the age of 75. The reason the bad guys go after this age group is they know that they're wonderful people. They're trusting people. They've worked hard their whole life and accumulated wealth. Sadly, sometimes elderly folks can be lonely. And so when the phone rings or somebody reaches out to them, they answer it and they're glad to talk to them. And the thing that I would start and end with is the bad guys these days, sadly, these cyber criminals, they're super smart, and they have really, really good tools. So they're very sophisticated. And I hear people say, like, well, that will never happen to my mom because, you know, she's very suspicious and she's really tech savvy. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to any of us. So we all, of all ages, but especially, you know, for seniors and, you know, us 50-year-olds need to talk to mom and dad who are in their 80s and 90s and really lay out a plan of how to deal with this, because it's a problem today and it's getting worse by the day.
Yeah, there was that original scam of pretending to be the grandson. I'm in jail, I need money. I remember sitting with my mom, who was incredibly close with my kids, and saying, this is not real, don't fall for this. But again, I think to your point, we got to get word out to the masses. We have to keep telling the story, because the other thing that's incredible to me is, to your point, we used to think as criminals as those dumb guys who did stupid stuff and got caught. These guys aren't stupid, and they're finding more and more and more ways to look authentic, whether that's in a text message or in an email or some kind of contact. And it's kind of sad, because if these guys would take what they do and turn it to good, it would be amazing what they could do.
Right. Yeah. Sadly, they are extremely smart. They're very well funded. They're making a lot of money. In some cases, they're supported by nation states overseas. And because they're making so much money, they're able to reinvest that, just like any business. I mean, and these are businesses. This isn't just some kid in his basement. These are organized businesses that are going about this in a very systematic way. And first off, they're harvesting information. So when they come after and attack someone and come after them, they're coming into that with a lot of knowledge about that person. So, you know, they then sound very, very credible, and they know answers to every question. And so I'll kind of take you through a scenario of how this can happen in a typical situation. And, you know, because just in our day-to-day lives, things about us get published, whether it's in the newspaper, on the radio, on social media, on government websites. So a real story of someone that I've worked with to try to help them recover from a cyber scam where they got scammed out of over $30,000.
Wow.
That's a lot of money to anybody.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of money to a senior who's worked hard their whole life to accumulate that. And what the bad guys do is they're using automated tools to do this. They're gathering information about a person, and they find out their interests. So they can see that, wow, this person, based on their activity online on social media like Facebook, they're expressing an interest in certain causes. And this particular person was very patriotic and very upset, as everyone is, about the terrible war in Ukraine. And they had commented on things so they could see that was an interest of them. They could also see that they were very passionate about pets and rescue dogs and rescue cats and making sure that, pets had a good home. So they use that information to start a dialogue on social media with this person and befriend them, and over time build up trust. And they usually start with a small amount. Just, could you just donate a little bit of money to this cause to help the Ukrainian soldiers? And then it just keeps accumulating. So they get you to open your wallet a little bit and then keep building that trust and rapport, and then they move in for the big take. And they come at you from multiple angles, online, on the phone, even, and they're at the same time, they're getting little bits of information, and they keep accumulating that. They're also, as I said, mining government websites. In this particular case, they were able to see that the person had lost a family member, and so they're looking at the obituary, right? So they can see in the obituary who's who, who's related to who,
Wow.
who's the uncle. They could see that this person didn't have many family members. They might surmise that, well, maybe the person inherited some money because they were the only one left in the family. So they use all this information, and then they come at you from multiple angles. They will even show up at the door. I recently heard a story locally of where they'll send couriers out. This person was on the phone. They said, you need to pay us. The person said, well, I don't have any money. I don't have any way to go to the bank or anything. They said, well, what do you have in your home? They said, well, I have some gold coins. And so they got the person to go into their home safe, get the gold coins. They sent a courier and picked those up, and now that's gone.
A legal courier or one of their operatives?
They sometimes both.
Okay.
So sadly, sometimes the couriers, or the slang is mules that are used
Right, sure.
in the middle, don't even know that they're part of the scam. And there was a horrible one that was on the news here just a few months ago where the bad guys actually used Uber, an Uber courier, as the person to go get the money. And the courier, who was not party to the crime in any way, got shot and killed because when they showed up at the door to pick up the money from this innocent senior, he had figured out that he was getting scammed. He had a gun, and he shot the person because he thought that they were party to the crime. They weren't. So, it's really, really escalated, and we just need to be aware, and we'll talk about some ways that you can prevent this.
Yeah, and I think, we're a shrinking world, right? I mean, because of the fact that social media has become such a big part of all of our lives, and because information is so readily available at our fingertips, it's not like we're going to go backwards from that. So it's a matter of how do we protect ourselves going forward.
That's right, yeah, because sadly what a lot of seniors and family members will do is they kind of just withdraw then, and they unplug and say, well, I'm not going to answer my phone because whenever it rings, it's a bad guy. I'm not going to be on email because it's the bad guys. I'm not going to be on social media because I'm just getting scammed. And so they withdraw, and they get more and more isolated and unplugged. Then you get lonely. Social isolation and loneliness is a terrible disease, and there's bad health effects of that. Being chronically lonely is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Yeah, I heard
Validated
that recently.
health fact. So you need to be connected. You need to be connected to people, and face-to-face clearly is the best. But, you have family around the country and so on. So you've got to do it in a safe way. And that's why we invented GrandPad, that increases connection with family, but it's that circle of trust. It's people are invited in, and you can increase communication with them, but the bad guys can't get in. So, you don't want to withdraw from society, but you've just got to be vigilant, and we can talk about some tools on how to do that.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I kind of like to pivot to now is first of all, I'd like to know a little bit more about your team and how are you staying on top of what's going on out there, and then how are you then applying that to what you do with the GrandPad?
Yeah, so for me, it's 30 plus years in the technology field, including I was CIO at Bank of America. We're one of the largest online banks in the world at the time. So people care a lot about their money and their health records and so on. So that experience really taught me a lot. I also worked at Intuit, the makers of Quicken and TurboTax in Silicon Valley, and we learned a lot there. So it's bringing those skills and then assembling a team. We've got a team of more than 150 people around the world who bring experience and knowledge of this, and then working in the field every day and just constantly educating ourselves how to stay ahead of the bad guys and know what scams they're up to. And so, you know, what we're seeing is there's this awesome new super powerful AI tools out, generative AI. We've all heard about ChatGPT, and like any powerful tool, it can be used in wonderful, good ways. I mean, AI is already accelerating, helping find cures for horrible diseases and used in pharmaceutical drug research. So we're all going to reap the benefits of these great tools, but the bad guys are using them as well. And so knowing that and staying on top of that so we can do things like this and spread the word and make people aware. And the thing, just to underline that point with AI, we were talking earlier about like Morgan Freeman and what a great voice he has. And so now with AI, and they're out there, you can Google them and see them. I mean, there's amazing deep fake video and audio of Morgan Freeman speaking. Yeah. And, you know, you cannot tell that it's not him. So we all know about deep fakes, but now these deep fakes, it doesn't have to just be someone famous like Morgan Freeman, just with a small snippet of anyone's voice. And one of the ways they'll get snippets of people's voices, they'll call them and hello, who is this? And they're just recording your voice, right. Maybe get you to say a few words and they hang up. Now they have a voice recording of you, the senior, or of your granddaughter, right? Or a granddaughter posts something on Facebook, they now have audio and video of that person. From a tiny snippet of a voice, they now can make a deep fake AI chatbot so that when, you know, hey, Grandma, this is your grandson Scott calling, and it sounds exactly like my voice right now, and it's interactive. So Grandma says, well, hey, Scott, I'm surprised you're calling me this early. Where are you? Oh, I'm in Wabasha, you know, where I live. Okay. Well, this seems kind of odd. What's your dog's name? Oh, my dog is Rocky. You know, he's a black lab, right? So they've harvested all this information about me, and it's feeding that real time. It's just like it's talking to me. So poor Grandma doesn't like, wow, this is Scott. So what should you do? A, be suspicious and hang up and call Scott back. That, you know, call your grandson back on the number you know is the right number. Call your grandson's dad. Hey, where is Scott? What's going on? But the second thing is just slow things down, right? The bad guys are really good mind manipulators, and they try to create a sense of urgency. We got to do this right now. You know, I'm in jail and I need your help, and if you don't do it, and don't tell mom and dad. So they create this panic and urgency. And again, hang up, slow things down. There's no situation where money needs to be transferred right now. So just slow it down.
If it doesn't, put it to the smell test. Doesn't smell right, stop, right? I mean, especially if that, you know, and again, like any grandparent, if my granddaughter called, I'd freak out, right? I'd want to help her. But to the point is, slow down, to your point. If the number doesn't look right, that should be one of the first red flags, right? If it's going to come from a number you recognize, or at least it should, and there's the ability to spam those too. I understand.
They get scam numbers. Even if the number looks right, the voice sounds right, everything. You've got to be really, really suspicious. And you know, it's like, well, gosh, my grandson Scott's never called me asking for money before. This is odd. And even if you have helped him with money before, validate. Just say, I'm going to call you back, and I'm going to call your dad, and let's just take some time and slow this down a little bit, because it is going to be, again, none of us, even, you know, tech experts, you won't be able to tell the difference. So you've got to put in place some tools and that can do it. One of the things we've said too is come up with a secret family password that truly no one else would know, that they can't find out. It's not the dog's name. It's not grandma's maiden name. Like, it's a family password that would be extraordinarily unlikely. And so you say, well, Scott, what's the family password? And it's, King James or whatever, that some word that no one knows. And so ask some questions, but slow things down, call people back, and put in place other tools. And so GrandPad is one way that you can know that when GrandPad rings, we built it, so the only people that can call are people that are invited in. Those are the kinds of things you should implement, because for all of us, it's not, if we're going to get scammed, it's when we do, and then what happens and how do we handle that situation.
The technology that you're using to protect seniors, do you foresee that with your company growing past seniors?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that. We definitely are expanding. We focus, the GrandPad tablet today is really focused on people age 75 plus, built just for them. Nice, large screen, easy to read, easy to hear. All the technology stripped away, 24/7 customer care. So really focused on that age group. But then we invite in the whole family and the rest of the family, the kids, the grandkids, the great-grandkids. They use our free companion app on their iPhone or Android phone or on their laptop. So the whole family is a user. But we are working on other products for the rest of the family as well. So we do have new things coming. We'll come back to tell you about those later this year.
Exciting. We'll love to hear about it. So we've talked a lot here, but let's talk a little bit more about just prevention. And obviously you said slow down is one of the keys, but what are other things that people can do to protect themselves against these scams?
Yeah, so first you got to keep an eye on your finances, because the bad guys are going, they want to steal your identity, find out more about you, and use that information to get your money. I mean, these are for-profit businesses going after the money. So you got to keep an eye on the money, and there's a number of things you can do, especially as people age, and there's bills to pay and insurance and so on. It's good to have a second set of eyes. So authorize that trusted son or daughter to review your bank account statements each month. Put them as a reviewer. If you don't want them to have access, you can set it up so they can only review. So they're always looking at where is the money going and if there's any odd payments. Reduce the number of credit cards you have. Have one and keep a close eye on it. And then get a tool like the one that I use is called Credit Karma with a K. And it's a nice little app and website. It's free to use, but it allows you to keep track of your credit score and people accessing your credit history. So one of the other scams is the bad guys will go out and get credit cards in your name and run up a bunch of bills, and then a month later you get the bill that says, hey, Scott, you've gone on a shopping spree and you didn't even know you had that credit card, right? Or they'll open bank accounts in your name. Credit Karma lets you monitor that and see, like, ping, and you can intervene quickly. So you got to be paying attention. You got to be watching your money, watching your credit score. Establish a relationship with your bank. And I grew up in a small town. I live in a small town. But I think sometimes it's difficult to keep up with all these scams. So establishing a real tight relationship with the bank and say, look, and let's say Scott here, age 50, come in with mom who's 80 and talk to the banking team there and say, look, my mom will never come into this bank and ask to wire money. And you can sign something that says, do not let my mother ever wire money anywhere without me and 2 other people in the family signing off on it. That would be an unusual request, because the banks try to serve, and mom comes in and they wire the money out. So
interesting on that subject. I will tell you about a situation that happened here in town where someone got this scam call, and they called their local bank, and asked them to do this. The bank saw the red flags, put it to the smell test, tried to talk to that person, and they didn't want to hear it.
Right.
So to what you're saying, what I would say too is let your bank do their job, right?
Right.
In addition to having that relationship, trust them and let them guide you when they see something that doesn't feel right.
That's right. And if you set it up in advance and set up these processes, so it says, look, we're not, the 80-year-old Scott, I'm not going to come in and wire a bunch of money. Maybe if I'm a realtor or I have, a business, like that's part of my normal operation. But for most people, wiring around tens of thousands of dollars is unusual. So set that up in advance. But yeah, trust the bank, let them ask questions. And also for all the bankers out there, there's a law called KYC, Know Your Customer. The banks are required by law to ask questions. This came about after 9/11 and the terrible terrorist attacks, of knowing where money is coming from and where it's going so it's not going to terrorists. So as a customer of a bank, don't be offended if they ask questions. They're trying to protect you. They're trying to make sure the money's not going to a bad guy. But again, slow things down. It's extremely unusual when money has to move the same day. Things can wait, ask some questions, and that way you give people time to intervene. The other is when there's questions, call your local authorities. And because it's such a problem, almost every community now has built up expertise. In Wabasha, we have one of the detectives there. Wabasha is a fairly small town, but he is fantastic, and he's built up a real expertise. And they want to help the seniors. It's not a burden, and you can call them and and say, look, it's not a 911 emergency, but I would need to talk to someone, and they'll connect you with the right person who can help you through that and answer some questions. And the other thing is, if you do get scammed, report it. And
it's exactly where I was headed next.
And make sure you report it to your local authorities. And then the FTC has a website called ftcidentitytheft.gov. So it's identitytheft.gov, G-O-V. But don't be embarrassed. It happens. Sadly, it's happening so much. But by reporting it, you may feel like, well, what's the use? No, you need to report it because we've helped a number of people with these. The authorities are accumulating all these facts, and every time they get a report, then they're getting more information, evidence. And there was just a major bust in Europe where they go after the kingpins and they get them, and they got that because they accumulated all these facts over the years.
Well, and the other thing that I would tell you too is when you do report it, the beautiful thing is the relationships that the latent radio stations have. We hear from the police, and we're able to then say, hey, this is happening, watch for it, and we're able to warn people and hopefully prevent it from spreading because we've been told what's going on. What other? We've mentioned a lot of items here that people can do. Education is going to be one of the biggest ones, which is what I'm excited about. What we're going to do each month with this podcast is we're going to be able to keep educating people and telling them what's going on. We've talked a little bit about if you're scammed, what to do. What else do we need to tell people right now?
Call your mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa. Talk to them. Talk to them every day, hopefully, but at least once a week, minimum. We're all busy, but all of us young people, we've got these little amazing things in our pocket called smartphones, and you're driving, running here or there, waiting at an appointment or something. Just pick up the phone and call mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. Ask them, how are they doing? And so even if they haven't gotten scammed, and I hope they haven't, just that little phone call is going to brighten their day. Sadly, it's now up to about 50% of the super seniors, those over the age of 75, have chronic loneliness. Oftentimes their kids are forgetting about them. Yeah. So call them, it'll brighten their day, and it'll brighten your day. And by having that dialogue, and I know sadly both of my parents are gone now, but my mom, she was always worried she didn't want to bother me. So she wouldn't call me, even if there was something kind of on her mind, or she got one of these odd calls. So when I would call, and I would just say, Mom, how you doing? And I would listen. And then I would ask, what's going on? Have you got, and I would kind of inquire, you got to be careful. There's a lot of scams. Have you gotten any strange phone calls? And she'd say, well, I did actually get this phone call. And I'm sorry, okay, Mom, here. So just stay connected to your parents, and it will mean the world to them, and it will enrich your life.
Yeah, and when they're not here, like mine aren't here and yours aren't here, and you go to pick up the phone to call them, you kind of wish they were on the other end. So do it while they're still here. Yeah. It's amazing, too. I think, Scott, you would remember this as I do. The roles kind of change when they get older. You know, you kind of become the caretaker to the person that was your caretaker when you were younger.
Yeah. Well, and luckily, we invented GrandPad for my mom nearly 11 years ago now, and she was with us for over 5 years while we had GrandPad. And we were living in California. She was in Iowa, and I would video call her multiple times a week. And we have a feature in GrandPad called Capture the Memory. So you can automatically record those video calls. So I have 5 years of video calls of my mom.
How wonderful.
And, you know, I have those forever, and her great-great-grandkids who aren't even born now will get to see those, and she would tell me all these stories about her when she was a kid and all that. So, yeah, talk to your parents, your grandparents. It'll be, you know, make you better. It'll make you happy.
Father's Day is this Sunday. Call Dad.
That's right.
I was talking to my kids last weekend, and I said, and they were like, "What do you want for Father's Day?" And I said, "Just you guys, you know." And I think the older we get, the more that's true. We just want that time.
That's right. Yep. So, the memories.
Scott, it's been absolutely great to connect with you on our first episode of Safe and Sound. And what last bit of information should we share before we call this first one good?
Yeah. Hey, be careful. Sadly, I wish this wasn't happening, but it's going to continue. The bad guys, the scammers are out there. So talk to your parents, your grandparents, put in place these tools. GrandPad might be part of that solution. And just be vigilant and know that the bad guys are getting smarter by the day. But if we all work together, we can prevent the scams.
And I love the idea of the family code word. I think that's awesome.
That's right.
Scott, thank you for joining us. Look forward to next month.
Thank you.
Safe and Sound is a monthly podcast presented by GrandPad and the Leighton Podcast Network. Find this and other podcasts on demand at WinonaRadio.com.